Hi, I'm Nora, 26, and the moment my brother walked down that golden aisle under an arch of imported orchids, I knew I was done pretending. They called it his fairy tale. My parents spent $60,000 on his wedding, custom venue, designer tux, fireworks over the lake at midnight. They even flew in a harpist from Austria. I didn't even know harps traveled. When I got engaged 6 months later to the quiet, sweet guy I met in grad school, Elias, a violinist who makes more music than money, I was over the moon. I wasn't expecting diamonds raining from the ceiling, but I figured they'd be happy. Instead, my mother blinked once, then smiled like she just tasted sour milk and said, "Well, eloping would be more practical, wouldn't it?" Practical. As in, don't ask us for a dime. Just don't embarrass us. I laughed. Out loud. At the dinner table. Dad looked up from his steak like I'd interrupted something sacred. "You're both artists," he added slowly, as if that justified the verdict. "We just think something simple fits you better." Fits. Like a tight shoe or a cheap dress. Like I was born to play the budget role. My brother, Adam, hadn't even asked for the wedding. That's the worst part. He wanted something small. My parents insisted on doing it right. For appearances, for legacy, for the guest list of people who barely knew his middle name. They even had calligraphy on the place cards and monogrammed cocktail napkins. When I told them Elias and I were thinking of having a small garden wedding, just immediate family, my mother actually sighed with relief. "Oh good," she said, already scrolling through her calendar. "Maybe something on a weekday, cheaper venues, you know." Cheaper. It's funny. They didn't even ask who I was marrying. Just what it would cost. Elias squeezed my hand under the table. He knew. He always knew. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and said it out loud for the first time. "I think I'm going to walk out." He looked up from brushing his teeth, foamed smile and all, and said, "Okay. When?" I stared at my own reflection, at the woman I had quietly folded into something digestible for 26 years, and whispered, "Soon." The next morning, I booked a courthouse appointment for Friday at 10 a.m. It wasn't dramatic. No lace, no announcements. Just us. Just right. We didn't tell anyone. Not even our closest friends. Elias wore a navy blue suit he'd owned since his recital finals, and I wore a cream-wrapped dress I found in the back of my closet. My heels were 2 years old and missing a rhinestone. I didn't care. After we signed the papers and kissed under fluorescent lights that buzzed like tired flies, we walked 2 blocks to a little bakery Elias loved. We ordered pastries, toasted with espresso shots, and shared a table with a retired librarian named Judy who gave us unsolicited but oddly perfect marriage advice. Be kind. Even when you're exhausted. The whole day cost us $112, including the tip. My phone buzzed around noon. It was a group text from my mom. "Family update. Adam and Chelsea are buying a lake house. We're helping with the down payment. Celebratory dinner Sunday? RSVP, smiley face." I stared at the screen. No mention of me. No. "How are you, Nora?" No curiosity about my weekend plans. No idea they just lost the right to ever claim they didn't know. Elias looked at me across the table, pastry crumbs on his lip, and just said, "Still want to send them a photo?" I shook my head. "No. Let's see how long it takes them to notice." Spoiler, they didn't notice. Not for 2 weeks. Not when I skipped the family dinner. Not when I missed our cousin's baby shower. Not when I stopped responding to, "Did you see what Chelsea posted?" Texts from my aunt. 2 weeks of silence before my father called, irritated, not worried. "Nora, your mother's been saying you're being distant." I didn't correct him. I just said, "We eloped." There was a pause. Then, "You what?" "We got married. 2 Fridays ago." More silence. "No, congratulations." "No, we're happy for you." Just a sigh then. "I wish you told us. We would've. Well, I don't know what we would have done, but still." I waited. Then came the real question. How much did it cost? That was when I realized they didn't miss me. They missed the control. I wish I could tell you I cried. That their reaction broke something in me. But I didn't. And it didn't. What I felt was clarity. The kind that comes in clean lines and sharp colors, like stepping into sunlight after years of bad fluorescent lighting. I hung up without another word, turned off my phone, and went back to Elias on the couch. He was half asleep, glasses crooked, some old jazz vinyl murmuring in the background. "Did they say anything?" he mumbled. I kissed his forehead. "Not really." He nodded and pulled the blanket over both of us like that was all the closure we needed. But the thing about not making a scene is that eventually, someone else will. It happened on a Wednesday. I was walking out of my office. Yes, I have a real job, something my parents conveniently forget when they describe me as artsy, and Chelsea was waiting by the elevator. She looked pissed in that expensive way, blazer, heels, ponytail like a pulled bowstring. I hadn't even known she had my work address. "You got married?" she snapped. "Hi, Chelsea. How's the lake house?" She rolled her eyes. "Your mom's been crying for 2 days. You could have just invited them." I hit the button for the elevator and turned to face her. They invited themselves to Adam's wedding. Paid for it. Planned it. Bought imported lilies and a champagne tower. And when it was my turn, I got a lecture about practicality. "That's not fair." "No," I cut in. "It's not. And it never has been. But I'm done asking for space at a table that was never built with me in mind." The elevator dinged. I stepped in. She stayed in the hallway, staring like she didn't know whether to be insulted or impressed. The next day, my mom sent a long, meandering email that began with, "We only wanted what was best for you," and ended with a Venmo notification for $200, labeled, "Belated Wedding Gift." I didn't reply. Instead, Elias and I sat on our tiny balcony with instant ramen and a bottle of grocery store Prosecco. He raised his glass. To invisible weddings. I clinked mine against his. To freedom. A week later, my brother called. Not texted. Not voice note. An actual call. That alone should have warned me something was coming. "Nora," he said, voice cautious like I might explode through the phone. "Can we talk?" "Technically we are," I replied, fully knowing I was being difficult. He sighed. "Okay. Look. I didn't know Mom and Dad told you to elope." "You didn't?" I asked, eyebrows already raised despite no one being there to see it. "They told me you wanted it that way." Ah. There it was. The manipulation wasn't even subtle. They painted me as the minimalist rebel, the artsy independent type who chose a tiny wedding because that's just so Nora. Adam probably imagined me eloping barefoot in a sunflower field, not blinking under courthouse fluorescence. "Did it ever occur to you to ask me directly?" I said. Adam hesitated. "Honestly? No. You always seemed like... I don't know. Like you didn't want the spotlight." "No, Adam. I didn't want to fight for crumbs while you got the whole cake." That shut him up. I didn't say it to hurt him. I just needed him to hear it out loud. Needed someone in the family to actually understand that this wasn't about jealousy or drama. It was about dignity. "Look," he said after a pause, "Chelsea and I are doing a reception next month at the lake house. You and Elias should come. No expectations. Just show up. Be yourselves." I laughed. "At the $60,000 venue you were forced into?" "Exactly," he said. "If I have to toast to a marriage I barely planned, the least I can do is let you spike the punch." It was the first time we'd spoken like siblings in years. After we hung up, Elias looked up from his violin case and said, "You going?" "I might," I said. "Do I have to wear shoes?" "Probably," I sighed. "But you can wear the ones with holes in them." He nodded. "Cool. Just checking." That night, we slow danced in our living room to no music at all. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional honk from the street below. And I thought, maybe you don't need a harpist or a $6,000 cake to make something feel like forever. You just need someone who holds you when the applause is gone, and still says, "You matter." The reception was exactly what you'd expect from people who paid $60,000 to impress their friends and forgot to check if they liked each other. Don't get me wrong, the lake house was gorgeous. Vaulted ceilings, wraparound deck, the kind of place that smells like cedar and money. Adam and Chelsea posed near the boathouse in matching linen outfits, smiling like a brochure for generational wealth. But the second I stepped onto that lawn in a $42 thrifted dress and sandals with peeling soles, I could feel it, the hush. That awful little ripple of, "Oh." She showed up. I grabbed 2 flutes of champagne and handed one to Elias. "Let's see how long it takes before someone pretends this is all a misunderstanding." He sipped, squinted at the crowd, and whispered, 3 minutes. Tops. It took 2.5. Aunt Lila cornered me first, all saccharine and side-eye. "So glad you could come, sweetheart. You know, your mother was just heartbroken when you ran off like that." "I didn't run," I said, sipping calmly. "I walked. With intention." She blinked. Elias bit his lip to stop from laughing. Then came the passive-aggressive parade. Cousins pretending to not know I was married. Uncle Greg trying to casually ask if we'd filed the paperwork. Someone's kid actually said, "You're the one who didn't get a real wedding, right?" "Correct. Give that child a sticker." And yet, I didn't feel small. Not like I used to. Maybe it was Elias, who never once let go of my hand. Or maybe it was Adam, who eventually took the mic, cleared his throat, and did something I never expected. He told the truth. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he began. "And I also want to say something that's been on my chest for a while. I didn't plan this wedding. My parents did. They meant well. But what I really admire is my sister." Heads turned. I nearly dropped my champagne. She got married on her terms. With no budget, no flowers, no design or anything. Just love. That's what I wanted too. But I didn't fight for it. She did. And I think that deserves a round of applause. For the first time in my life, I heard it, people clapping. For me. I didn't know whether to cry or teleport out of there. But Elias leaned in and whispered, "Let them clap. It's your stage now." And in that moment, surrounded by fake smiles and real noise, I realized something. I wasn't invisible anymore. The applause didn't last long, but the silence that followed was even louder. My parents sat at their table like someone had just unplugged them. My mom clutched her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. My dad blinked slowly, like he was buffering. I could practically hear the thought racing through their heads. That wasn't in the script. Adam handed the mic back like it was a grenade and walked straight over to us. He hugged me. Not a side hug, not the polite pat of a brother doing his sibling duty, an actual hug. A squeeze. A "sorry I've been blind for 10 years" kind of hug. Chelsea joined him. She looked different. Not polished. Not performative. Just tired. "For what it's worth," she said, "he fought to get that speech past your mom." I raised an eyebrow. "You needed clearance?" She smirked. "You know how Catherine Walker gets when someone threatens the optics." We shared a laugh, and it wasn't fake. After that, people started treating me like I was real. Like I had always been there, but now with a spotlight someone had finally flipped on. Later in the evening, Mom approached. She waited until we were alone. Elias had wandered off to debate Bao Razan with the wedding DJ, of all people, and then stood in front of me like a student called to the front of the class. "I didn't know you were that unhappy," she said quietly. "You didn't ask," I replied. She nodded, slow. "I thought we were giving Adam what he deserved. That you didn't want that sort of thing." "No," I said. "You gave him what you wanted. And you assumed I wouldn't notice the difference." She looked down at her heels like the floor might open up and swallow her. "Do you hate us?" It should have been a dramatic moment. A heavy question with a teary pause and a swelling music cue. But it wasn't. "No," I said. "But I've stopped hoping you'll understand me. And that feels better than forgiveness right now." She nodded again. Not because she agreed. Because she had no choice. Before she walked away, she reached into her clutch and pulled out an envelope. "We should have helped," she said. "Here. For your future." I took it. Later, in the car, Elias opened it while I drove. Inside, a check for $3,000 and a folded note that just read, "We're trying." He looked at me and said, "You want to cash it?" I thought for a moment. Then I smiled. "Nope. But I might frame it." 3 months later, Elias and I were sitting on the floor of our new apartment, a 2-bedroom with a view of a brick wall and a sliver of sky, eating takeout from paper cartons and listening to an old wedding playlist we never got to use. "Do you think they're actually changing?" he asked between bites of kung pao tofu. I thought about it. I thought about how my dad had started calling me once a week, awkward but genuine, asking questions about my job instead of offering unsolicited financial advice. How my mom had sent me a vintage cookbook in the mail, one she used when she first married my dad, complete with coffee stains and pencil notes like, "Double garlic for Adam's breath." I thought about how, last week, Chelsea sent me a photo of Adam building a garden box in their backyard, shirtless and sweating like he was auditioning for a rom-com. The caption read, "He's decided to grow things. Emotional and otherwise." I thought about how none of that erased 25 years of quiet neglect, but how it did prove that even deeply ingrained dysfunction could twitch a little when confronted. "I think they're trying," I finally said. "And that's more than I ever expected." Elias nodded, poking his chopsticks into the rice. "You think you'll ever want a big wedding? You know. Down the line. With family and lights and maybe a harp?" I laughed. "Only if the harp is played by a guy named Dan who also does stand-up." "Dan the harp guy." "Got it." He reached over and pulled me into his side. The playlist shifted to a soft instrumental version of something cheesy and romantic, and for a minute, we didn't say anything. Just sat there, leaning into each other, the way people do when they've chosen their home, not inherited it. A week later, we threw a dinner party. Nothing fancy, just 6 friends, mismatched chairs, lasagna that took 5 hours because I couldn't figure out how to use our new oven. But it was ours. It was warm and messy and loud and filled with stories and laughter that didn't sound borrowed or cautious. Midway through dessert, Adam called. "You home?" he asked. "We're 2 blocks away." "Brought wine." "And, Mom." My brain short-circuited for half a second. "You brought Mom to a lasagna dinner?" "She insisted," he said. "Said she wants to see where her daughter lives. You know, like a real person." I opened the door 10 minutes later to see my mother holding a bottle of wine and a store-bought cake, eyes already scanning the hallway like it might judge her. She looked at me. Really looked. And said, "We're not here to make a scene. We're here because we don't want to miss anything else." And for the first time since the courthouse, I said the words out loud. "I'm glad you came." The room went quiet when my mother walked in. Not because anyone was tense or shocked, but because there was a moment. The kind that hums in the air before a shift. Where history balances on the edge of a lasagna tray and a boxed red velvet cake. She stood just inside the door, unsure. Not the usual version of her, the one who corrects table settings and uses decorum in everyday sentences. This was someone, smaller. Still proud, but different. Less curated. More real. Elias offered her a plate. Adam poured her a glass of wine. And just like that, the world didn't implode. It turned. She sat between Jordan, my old roommate, and Samira, a friend of mine from the publishing house who once got kicked out of a yoga class for laughing too loud. And she held her own. She laughed at the right moments, complimented the basil in the salad, and only winced once when someone said, F***K, mid-story. Progress. Halfway through the night, I caught her watching me. Not judging. Just observing. The way I moved. The way I touched Elias's shoulder when I got up. The way I existed in my own space like I belonged there. Later, when most of the dishes were piled in the sink and people were too full to move, she came to me in the kitchen. Just the 2 of us. No audience. "I know you don't believe me," she said, fiddling with the ribbon on the cake box. "But I'm proud of you." I didn't answer right away. Because I wasn't looking for that anymore. But I said, "Thank you," because I knew it cost her something. Vulnerability always does. She nodded. "You know, when you were little, you used to build forts out of towels and chairs." You'd sit under them for hours with your books and toys and tell me it was your castle. I laughed. Yeah. Adam always knocked them down. She smiled. You always rebuilt them. Stronger. With better defenses. I leaned against the counter. Nothing's changed. No, she said. But I think this time, I'd like to be invited in. We didn't hug. We're not there yet. But when she left, she kissed me on the cheek and didn't wipe her lipstick off with a tissue like she usually did. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet again, Elias wrapped his arms around me and said, You're still standing. No, I whispered, kissing his knuckles. I'm thriving. A year after that lasagna dinner, Elias and I renewed our vows, this time in a community garden surrounded by friends, wildflowers, and folding chairs. Adam played guitar. Chelsea cried. My mom read a Pablo Neruda poem and managed not to correct a single thing. We danced barefoot on grass. The cake was homemade. The harpist was, in fact, a guy named Dan who told 3 jokes between songs. No fireworks. No imported orchids. No price tag. Just love. Just ours. And as I stood in the middle of it all, laughing, barefoot, married on my terms, I realized something that had taken me nearly 3 decades to learn. The dream wedding isn't the one with the biggest budget. It's the one where you don't have to ask permission to be the main character in your own life. And mine? Mine started the day I walked out. And never looked back.